What if everything you believed about your inheritance was a lie? What if the land you were told was worthless, barren, a wasteland, was actually hiding a fortune beyond your wildest imagination? For generations, my family's ancestral plot had been dismissed. Neighbors scoffed, experts shrugged, even my own relatives called it a useless patch of dust and rocks. I was ready to believe them. I was ready to accept that the land was worthless, that it held nothing of value. But then, something changed. It started with curiosity, a tiny spark of defiance. I walked the fields, kicking stones, watching dust swirl into the late afternoon sunlight, and I asked a question that no one had dared to ask before. Could it really be as worthless as they claimed? I didn't expect an answer. I didn't expect anything extraordinary. I only expected to confirm what everyone already believed. But nature, as it turns out, had a story of its own. Every step I took, every rock I examined, was a silent rebellion against generations of doubt. I imagine the eyes of the skeptics, the murmurs of neighbors, the quiet whispers of family members. Why waste time on that useless land? And yet, I couldn't stop myself. There was something about it, a subtle hint, a feeling, a pull, that said, "Look closer." I started small, collecting soil samples, examining rock formations, documenting every oddity. The land spoke in ways no one else could hear. I noticed a glimmer beneath the rocks, a streak of color that seemed out of place. It was subtle, almost dismissible, but my gut told me, this is the beginning. The beginning of what, I didn't know yet, but it would change everything.
Growing up, I had inherited more than just land. I had inherited doubt, skepticism, and the shadow of failure. My family had long accepted that the land was worthless, and so had I. Every story I was told reinforced it. It won't grow anything. You can't build on it. It's a dead patch of earth. I almost believed it. Almost. But there was a stubborn voice inside me, a voice that refused to accept a verdict written by generations, a voice that whispered, "What if you are wrong?" I spent months walking the land, mapping the terrain, learning its angles, feeling its pulse. It was meditative. It was lonely, but it was also exhilarating. Because deep down, I knew that if there was value here, it would not announce itself. It would not reveal itself to the faint-hearted or the skeptics. It would only reward patience, curiosity, and courage. I began experimenting, testing soil, examining rocks for unusual properties. I recorded every anomaly, every glimmer, every hint. Neighbors passed by, shaking their heads. Family members laughed. "Stop wasting your time," they said. "It's useless. Just sell it and forget it." And I almost gave in. Almost. But the tiniest glimmer of hope kept me going. It was subtle. A streak of mineral in the soil, a reflective edge on a rock. I couldn't explain it scientifically yet. I didn't even know if it meant anything. But my heart knew one thing. This land is hiding something. Something no one else believed existed. Something beyond skepticism. Something that could change everything. The first part ends with a seed of discovery planted, a subtle glimmer in the dirt, a spark of curiosity, and the promise that the land, dismissed by generations, might be far more valuable than anyone could imagine.
Have you ever been told something was worthless so many times that you almost believed it yourself? That was my life with my family's land. For generations, it had been dismissed as barren. Neighbors joked about it, experts shook their heads, even relatives, those who should have believed in me, called it a waste of space. Nothing grows there. You can't build on it. It's not worth a penny. Every phrase had chipped away at my confidence until almost everything inside me agreed. It is worthless. There is nothing there. And yet, there was something inside me that refused to surrender, a stubborn spark that whispered, "What if they are all wrong?" It began with a small act of defiance. I decided to walk the land not for validation, not to prove anyone wrong, but simply because I needed to know. I started observing every inch of it. The way the sunlight hit the soil in the early morning, casting subtle shadows over the rocks. The sound of dry grass swaying in the wind, almost like it was trying to communicate something. The occasional glint of metal in the dirt that no one else had ever noticed. It seemed insignificant at first, a trick of the light, a reflection from a piece of glass, perhaps. Yet my intuition told me otherwise. There was purpose in these subtle signs. I began to catalog everything, sketching the land in my notebook, marking odd formations, taking soil samples, photographing unusual rocks. The work was tedious, alone, frustrating at times. Every day the voices of skeptics haunted me. "Why are you wasting your time? It's barren, nothing is there. You'll never find anything." And yet, I persisted because I had started to notice a pattern, a hidden logic that no one else could see. Somewhere beneath the surface, the land was trying to tell me something, and I needed to listen. Weeks passed. I dug carefully, methodically, following the faint glimmers that had begun to appear in the soil. At first, it was only small streaks, almost dismissible. Yet they were there, and they seemed to pulse with potential. I kept thinking, if I am wrong, I've lost nothing but time. If I am right, I may never forgive myself for ignoring this. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found it. A vein of mineral cutting across the rock like a hidden ribbon of light. It wasn't obvious, it wasn't flashy, but it was there, hidden in plain sight. My heart raced. I almost couldn't breathe. Could this be real? Had I really stumbled upon something no one else had ever seen? I spent the night examining the discovery, measuring, photographing, taking careful notes. The magnitude of it began to sink in. This wasn't ordinary rock. It wasn't mere soil. It was something rare, something valuable. For the first time, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhalation. Because if I was right, everything I had been told about this land was a lie. And if I was wrong, well, I would have no choice but to face the skeptics once again. I decided to proceed cautiously, to validate the discovery scientifically. And so began a journey that would transform not just my understanding of the land, but my entire life.
The next days were a blur of research and experimentation. I contacted mineral experts discreetly, explaining that I had discovered a rare formation on my land. Most of them were skeptical at first. "Where?" they asked. "Are you sure?" Many people mistake ordinary stones for minerals. I showed them photographs, sketches, and samples. Some laughed politely. Some frowned, unsure if I knew what I was doing. One expert even said, "Most of the land in that region is worthless. What you have is probably just quartz or mica." I felt doubt creep in. But the vein I had found didn't lie. It glimmered faintly in sunlight, its unique texture and composition whispering its hidden value. Determined, I began a series of tests: chemical analysis, field observation, even small excavations. Each test confirmed what I had begun to suspect. There was something extraordinary beneath my feet, something rare, something no one had discovered for generations. Emotionally, it was overwhelming. I had grown up accepting my land as worthless. I had internalized the skepticism and even learned to laugh at the jokes myself. Yet now, I was discovering that every voice of doubt I had internalized had been wrong. The land, which I had once believed was a mere patch of dirt and rock, was actually hiding a vein of incredible value. It was a transformative moment, not just because of potential wealth, but because it shattered the narrative that had defined my life. I realized that generations of doubt had blinded us to the possibilities hidden in plain sight. I began imagining what this discovery could mean. It was more than money. It was validation. It was proof that curiosity and persistence could defy skepticism. It was proof that patience and observation could unlock secrets that no one else saw. And yet, the real challenge was only beginning. Because finding the vein was one thing, convincing the world, or even my family, that it was valuable was another. Skepticism ran deep, and I knew that revealing the discovery too early could invite ridicule, disbelief, or worse. So I chose patience, observation, careful documentation. Each day I would walk the land, study the vein, and take meticulous notes on its composition, size, and potential value. I felt a strange pride, a sense of purpose I had never experienced. For the first time in years, I was not defined by the limits imposed by others. I was defined by the truth I had uncovered myself. Neighbors began to notice subtle changes. I started spending hours on the land, walking, digging, testing. They whispered behind my back, "Still playing in the dirt? Nothing there will ever be worth anything." And I smiled quietly to myself, because I knew something they didn't. I knew the land's secret, and that knowledge carried a power no one could take away. Emotionally, it was exhausting. Every day was a battle against doubt, both theirs and my own. Every sample, every test was a moment of fear. What if I was wrong? What if the vein was smaller than I imagined? What if my assumptions were false? And yet, every glimmer, every discovery, every measured streak of mineral reaffirmed my belief. This land, dismissed for generations, was not worthless. It was priceless. The transformation I felt was internal as well as external. The land had awakened something in me. Courage to question accepted beliefs, patience to investigate quietly, thoroughly, faith and observation and intuition over hearsay, recognition that perseverance can reveal secrets no one else sees. For years, I had felt powerless, trapped by the judgments of others. Now I felt alive, capable, and unstoppable. And so the seed of discovery had been planted. A single vein of mineral, barely noticeable at first, was now a symbol of possibility. A symbol that the stories we inherit are not always true. A symbol that patience, curiosity, and courage can reveal unimaginable wealth. Not just financial, but personal, emotional, and intellectual. The stage was set for a revelation that would not only transform my land, but the entire legacy of my family.
What if a single discovery could completely rewrite everything you thought you knew? After weeks of quiet investigation, the tiny glimmer I had first noticed in the soil was no longer subtle. It was becoming undeniable. A vein of mineral, hidden for generations, had begun to reveal its true scale. I felt a mix of excitement and fear, because for the first time, the stakes were real. This wasn't just a patch of rock. This was potentially life-changing. I returned to the site early one morning, the air crisp with dew, the sky still painted in muted shades of dawn. I had my tools ready: notebooks, measuring instruments, cameras, and an unshakable determination to uncover the truth. As I began digging more systematically, carefully removing layers of soil, I started seeing the vein clearly. It cut through the earth in irregular streaks. Its surface shimmered faintly in sunlight. Its color and texture were unlike anything I had seen in the region. I could feel my heartbeat accelerating. I was standing on something remarkable. Excitement mixed with doubt. Am I imagining this? What if it's just quartz or iron deposits? I reminded myself, patience. Scientific verification was key. I had already collected samples, but this was the moment to expand the investigation. I carefully traced the vein, following it as it disappeared and reappeared under rocks and soil. It was longer than I had first imagined, And as I measured it, I realized that its thickness and density suggested extraordinary potential. I documented every inch. Photographs, notes, diagrams, every piece mattered. Because this wasn't just curiosity now. This was a tangible, real possibility. A secret hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. The land that everyone had called worthless was suddenly speaking loudly. And for the first time, I could hear its story clearly. You doubted me, you dismissed me, but I hold value beyond imagination. I couldn't contain the thrill. I called an expert I trusted quietly, someone outside the circle of skeptics, and invited them to examine the site. When they arrived, I led them to the largest portion of the vein. I watched their expressions carefully. At first, polite skepticism, then surprise, then disbelief, and finally, acknowledgement. This is rare, the expert said, almost whispering. Most people wouldn't recognize this. If you are correct, it could be extraordinarily valuable. My hands trembled as I listened. Years of doubt, ridicule, and skepticism had led to this moment. I had begun as someone accepting the verdict of generations. Now I was holding evidence that contradicted every assumption I had ever been told. The excitement was overwhelming, but so was the responsibility, because a discovery like this could change not only my life, but the trajectory of my family's legacy. I began calculating potential yields. Based on preliminary analysis, the vein could easily reach a value in the tens of millions, and if fully verified, we could be looking at something unprecedented. The land that everyone had called worthless was now revealed as a hidden treasure. I had to be careful. I couldn't let word get out too soon. Skeptics would attempt to discredit, neighbors would gossip, family might doubt. So I documented everything meticulously, cross-checked findings with multiple experts, analyzed soil composition, mineral density, and geological structures. Each test confirmed my initial suspicion. This wasn't just luck. This was a hidden fortune waiting quietly beneath our feet.
Emotionally, it was an intense journey. I had grown up internalizing skepticism. I had accepted the stories of worthlessness. Even I had begun to believe them. Now, the narrative had shifted completely. The land I had thought was a burden was now a symbol of possibility, courage, and resilience. It was more than money. It was proof that observation, persistence, and intuition matter. It was proof that sometimes the world is hiding its treasures from everyone, waiting for someone patient, someone curious, someone brave enough to look closer. I reflected on the years I had wasted accepting others' judgment, how easily doubt can control our perception, how often skepticism silences discovery, and how one small act, my choice to continue exploring, had begun to rewrite everything. There was a profound sense of empowerment. For the first time, I felt the weight of possibility resting fully on my shoulders. I realized that the value of the land was not just financial. It was validation of my intuition, recognition of my perseverance, proof that skepticism, even from family and experts, could be defied. I also felt the weight of responsibility. This discovery was enormous. It could change our family's fortunes. It could create envy, conflict, and pressure. I had to manage it carefully. I had to think strategically, scientifically, and ethically. And yet, beneath all that, there was awe. Awe at the land itself. Awe at the vein of mineral, hidden for generations. Awe at the realization that nature still holds secrets, waiting for those willing to see. For hours, I wandered the site, examining the vein from every angle, noticing details I had missed before. Subtle color variations indicating purity, small offshoots of mineral that hinted at an even larger network, geological markers suggesting untapped potential. Each detail heightened both excitement and nervousness. Could we truly estimate its full worth? Could we safely extract it without destroying its value?
I began envisioning the future. What would it mean to finally unlock the land's potential? How would it change the family's fortunes? How would it feel to prove generations of doubters wrong? Emotionally, it was a roller coaster. Excitement mingled with fear, joy mingled with doubt, hope mingled with caution. And yet I couldn't deny one truth. I had discovered something extraordinary, something that would redefine how I saw the world, something that demanded patience, intelligence, and courage, something that was mine to steward wisely. By the end of part 3, the vein's magnitude was clear. The skeptic's laughter had been silenced silently. The barren land was no longer barren. My confidence, once fragile and tentative, had solidified into certainty. This was no accident. This was proof that persistence and belief in your own observation can uncover what the world fails to see. The discovery had shifted everything. Family legacy was about to be rewritten, generational skepticism was about to be challenged, nature's hidden fortune had revealed itself to one persistent soul. The journey ahead promised discovery, verification, and eventual transformation. And emotionally, I was ready, because the land had taught me, value often hides in plain sight. Fortune favors the observant, the persistent, the patient, and the world, no matter how dismissive, still holds secrets that can change a life forever.
What if the land you believed was worthless suddenly held a fortune beyond your wildest dreams? After confirming the vein's existence with experts, it hit me. This was not just rare, it was potentially life-changing. The minerals we had discovered were among the rarest in the world, and the quantity hidden beneath the soil suggested a multi-million-dollar treasure. For generations, the land had been dismissed, but here I was, holding proof that everything we had been told was wrong. The barren field that no one had believed in, the plot that neighbors mocked, was now a potential $75 million legacy. I remember standing on the edge of the site that evening, the sunset casting long shadows across the field, feeling a mix of disbelief, excitement, and responsibility. I ran calculations over and over in my mind. Could this be real? Could one solitary vein transform not just my life, but the lives of my entire family and even the trajectory of our ancestral legacy? Experts confirmed the uniqueness of the mineral. The demand in international markets was high. Scarcity made it priceless, and the estimated volume suggested something extraordinary, a fortune large enough to rival small-scale mines. Yet the financial potential also brought pressure. I had to be methodical. Every step of verification had to be accurate. Every decision could have monumental consequences. Because once word got out, there would be interest, scrutiny, and inevitably, envy. But beyond that, there was awe. The realization that something hidden, overlooked, and dismissed for generations could hold unimaginable value was staggering. I walked the length of the vein, noticing subtle shifts in texture, small offshoots hinting at greater wealth, and patterns in the soil that confirmed what my intuition had already told me. This land had always been valuable. We just needed to see it. I began documenting everything meticulously: geological surveys, mineral density tests, market value projections, extraction feasibility studies. Each document built upon the previous one, creating a detailed, scientific case for the land's potential. And the reality began to sink in. This was more than curiosity, more than a personal triumph. This was a legacy, a family fortune waiting patiently for someone to recognize it. The initial disbelief I had felt was replaced with careful optimism. I realized that uncovering this hidden treasure was one thing, turning it into a legitimate $75 million opportunity was another. I needed strategy, I needed experts, I needed caution, because fortune this large never arrives without challenges, opposition, and risk. I remembered my family's skepticism, the neighbors' ridicule, and the many voices telling me the land was worthless. Now, as I stood above the vein, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I had persisted when others had given up. I had listened to intuition when everyone else had dismissed it. I had believed in the impossible, and the impossible had revealed itself.
Emotionally, the realization of financial potential was overwhelming. I had inherited not just land, but doubt. I had grown up believing in limitation. I had internalized the story of worthlessness. Now, that narrative was being rewritten before my eyes. The barren land had become a symbol of possibility, an emblem of perseverance, courage, and observation. I felt pride, but also responsibility, because such wealth came with consequences. Family expectations would rise, skeptics would try to discredit the discovery. Decisions had to be made carefully to protect the legacy. I began planning strategically. First, I needed verification from independent mineralogists. Second, I needed a secure evaluation of market potential. Third, I had to assess extraction logistics, ensuring sustainability and maximum efficiency. Each step required careful calculation. There was no room for error. The legacy of generations rested on these decisions. As I mapped out the vein, measured its width, depth, and density, and documented the patterns in the surrounding soil, I felt a profound sense of transformation. This was no longer just about money. It was about defying doubt. It was about rewriting family history. It was about proving that observation, patience, and persistence could unlock secrets the world had missed. I recalled moments from my childhood when the land was mocked and dismissed. Relatives laughing at my interest in farming or exploration, neighbors warning me to leave it alone, experts telling us nothing of value existed. Now, those memories fueled a quiet triumph. Every skeptical voice that had doubted me was evidence that persistence matters, that curiosity and courage can uncover the unseen. I also felt humility, because the land itself, with its hidden vein of mineral, had reminded me that value often exists quietly. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It waits for the patient, the observant, the brave. And in that realization, I felt connection to my ancestors who had tended the land, to nature, which had preserved the secret for generations, to myself for trusting my intuition when everyone else doubted. I knew that once extraction began, we would need careful management, legal protection for the land, expert consultation for extraction, financial planning to maximize returns, ethical considerations for sustainability. But emotionally, I was ready. For the first time, the land no longer felt like a burden. It felt alive. It felt like a partner in transformation. And I knew that this journey would not only change my life, but redefine what my family believed about possibility, value, and courage. I walked the property as the sun set, the shadows stretching long across the fields. I reflected on how far we had come, from a dismissed barren plot to a potential $75 million treasure, from skepticism and doubt to verification and hope, from inherited limitation to discovered potential. And in that moment, I understood something profound. We are often told what is impossible, what is worthless, what we cannot achieve. But sometimes the truth lies hidden, waiting for someone patient, persistent, and brave enough to uncover it. By the end of Part 4, the financial magnitude and potential of the land were clear. Skepticism had been transformed into cautious optimism. Personal and family narratives were being rewritten. The discovery had matured into a tangible opportunity. The journey ahead would demand courage, strategy, and vision. But emotionally, I felt empowered, validated, and ready. The barren land had finally revealed its hidden fortune.
Imagine standing on land that everyone told you was worthless and realizing it might hold a fortune beyond comprehension. After confirming the vein and assessing its potential, the next step was both thrilling and terrifying: extraction planning. We were no longer dealing with abstract possibility. This was real, tangible, and monumental. The first challenge was scale. The vein stretched further than initial calculations suggested. It was dense, continuous, and remarkably pure. Even experts whispered in awe as they reviewed the maps and samples. "This could be enormous," one mineralogist said, carefully weighing every measurement. "A vein of this size and quality, it's rare, truly rare." I remember pacing the field that evening, feeling the wind sweep over the barren soil, now shimmering in the fading sunlight. Each rock, each patch of earth felt alive. The land was no longer silent. It was communicating its potential, its hidden worth that generations had overlooked. I had inherited doubt, skepticism, and dismissal. Now I was inheriting strategy, responsibility, and immense opportunity. We began planning cautiously, documenting the vein's entire length and depth, consulting engineers about extraction methods, discussing the safest approach to preserve quality and value, estimating initial yields to validate financial projections. Every detail mattered. A single miscalculation could jeopardize decades of potential. Emotionally, it was a delicate balance. Excitement pulsed through every nerve. I could see the fortune, feel it, almost touch it in my mind. But fear was equally present, because this was not just about wealth, it was about legacy. It was about proving to generations of doubters, to neighbors, family, and myself that the impossible was, in fact, possible. The first step in extraction was careful excavation. We dug slowly, measuring every layer, documenting every streak. The vein's depth exceeded our initial expectations, confirming the enormous scale we had feared to imagine. At night, I would sit quietly, reviewing our notes, mapping extraction points, evaluating risk, considering market fluctuations and long-term sustainability. And each night, I felt a strange, powerful satisfaction. We were no longer chasing a dream, we were managing reality. A reality in which a land once deemed worthless was now potentially worth $75 million. The scale of discovery demanded careful communication. I couldn't announce our findings publicly. Skeptics would rush to discredit us. Competitors might try to intervene. Even family could misunderstand the significance. So we moved quietly, documenting, planning, and testing. Every sample was verified. Every estimate was conservative. We built layers of evidence to ensure that when the time came, our claim would be indisputable. And yet, despite the meticulous planning, a part of me still marveled at the audacity of it all. How could a land dismissed as barren, useless, worthless, hold this magnitude of hidden wealth? How could generations of skepticism blind everyone to what lay beneath? How could patience, observation, and intuition uncover something so extraordinary? I couldn't answer these questions fully. All I knew was that we were now custodians of a secret, a fortune hidden by nature itself, waiting to be discovered.
Emotionally, the discovery had begun to ripple through our family. For years, my relatives had dismissed the land. They had laughed at my curiosity, warned me to abandon what they considered a lost cause, and accepted its worthlessness as truth. Now, everything had changed. Initial skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. Eyes widened at the first verified mineral samples. Voices that once ridiculed began asking questions. Family members who had doubted me now watched, awed by the scale and quality of what we had uncovered. I realized the discovery was transforming more than our finances. It was transforming belief. It was transforming perspective. It was transforming the story we told ourselves about possibility and perseverance. Where once there had been dismissal, there was now curiosity. Where once there had been doubt, there was admiration. Where once there had been limitation, there was opportunity. And through it all, I felt a quiet pride. Pride in my patience, pride in my observation, pride in my courage to pursue what others dismissed. Because the land had taught me something invaluable. Value often hides in plain sight. Opportunity is overlooked by the faint-hearted. Persistence rewards those who dare to look closer. The process of planning extraction also revealed another transformation: personal growth. I became more meticulous, more strategic, more disciplined. I learned to balance excitement with caution, optimism with reality. I became a student of both nature and finance,
learning to respect the land as well as its potential market value. Emotionally, there were moments of tension and fear. What if the vein was smaller than we estimated? What if extraction was more difficult than anticipated? What if skepticism returned with force? But each challenge strengthened our resolve. Every calculation, every verification, every expert consultation reinforced the reality. This land was not worthless, it was priceless. The first whispers of external curiosity began to surface. Neighbors, previously dismissive, now asked about my sudden interest in the land. Family members began discussing potential investment strategies. Even local authorities began showing polite interest, curious about the changes. I remained cautious. We had to protect our discovery. We had to move quietly, strategically, deliberately. By the end of Part 5, the scale of the vein, the potential financial magnitude, and the emotional transformation were clear. The barren land had become a multi-million-dollar opportunity. Skeptics had begun to transform into believers. Personal confidence and family dynamics had shifted profoundly. The story was building towards its climax, a full reveal of the $75 million potential and the life-changing consequences of our discovery.
Imagine standing on land that generations called worthless, only to realize it could transform lives beyond imagination. After months of careful study, measurement, and consultation, the moment of truth arrived. The full scale of the vein was finally calculated. Experts confirmed what I had quietly suspected. The mineral deposits beneath our land were extraordinary. The estimated value? A staggering $75 million. I could hardly believe it. A piece of land dismissed as barren, useless, and unremarkable was now revealed to hold a fortune beyond comprehension. I remember the moment vividly. The sun was setting behind the distant hills, casting golden light across the fields, glinting off the mineral vein one last time for the day. I had gathered the family. We stood in silence, listening as the final reports and calculations were shared. Every measurement, every density analysis, every market projection had been verified multiple times, and the result was undeniable. This land was worth $75 million. The reactions were immediate and intense. Shock, disbelief, awe. Neighbors who had once mocked us stood quietly at a distance, unable to comprehend the transformation. Family members who had doubted me now stared in amazement, some with tears, as the reality sank in. The worthless land had become a life-changing treasure. Emotionally, it was overwhelming. All the skepticism, ridicule, and doubt that had plagued me for years suddenly seemed distant, almost surreal. I realized how much I had grown. Patience had taught me to observe carefully. Persistence had taught me to keep going despite ridicule. Courage had taught me to trust intuition over hearsay. And now, all of it culminated in this one extraordinary revelation. The financial potential opened doors we had never imagined. Investments for the family's future, opportunities to support causes we cared about, security for generations to come, the ability to pursue passions and dreams previously limited by lack of resources. It was more than money. It was a complete rewriting of our legacy. The scale of the vein was breathtaking, length stretching across the property with offshoots hinting at even more, depth reaching beneath the surface in rich, dense layers, purity exceptional, making it highly valuable in global markets. We began visualizing the extraction process carefully, sustainable techniques to preserve the land, phased extraction to maximize quality and value, strategic financial planning to ensure long-term benefit. I reflected on the journey that brought us here, from dismissive neighbors to skeptical family, from initial curiosity to methodical verification, from subtle glimmers in soil to a $75 million reality. It was a testament to one truth: value often hides in plain sight. Fortune favors those willing to look beyond appearances. Persistence and observation can unlock secrets generations overlook.
Emotionally, the revelation was transformative. The family, once bound by doubt, now embraced a new sense of possibility. We celebrated not just the financial fortune, but the courage, persistence, and patience that had led to this moment. I felt a profound connection to our ancestors. Though they had dismissed the land, their stewardship had preserved it perfectly, allowing the vein to remain hidden, untouched, and intact. In that moment, I realized something crucial. Legacy is not just inherited, it is discovered, nurtured, and revealed. I shared the story carefully with the family, ensuring everyone understood the significance and responsibility of the discovery. We made plans for the land, discussed sustainable management, and mapped out how to ensure the fortune benefited future generations. The emotional impact was just as profound as the financial one. Family bonds strengthened through shared discovery, generational skepticism replaced with belief and hope. The story of worthless land transformed into a story of vision, courage, and triumph. I also reflected on personal growth. I had learned to trust my intuition, even when surrounded by doubt. I had learned the value of patience, careful observation, and methodical research. I had learned that persistence could defy even deeply ingrained skepticism. This land, once a symbol of limitation, had become a symbol of empowerment, proof that belief combined with action could uncover unimaginable rewards. We also considered the broader lessons. Never dismiss potential. What seems worthless may hide immense value. Trust your intuition. Sometimes your inner voice knows the truth. Perseverance pays. Patience and effort can reveal what others overlook. Legacy is discovered, not just inherited. What you nurture today can transform tomorrow. The barren land had taught us all these lessons and more. Emotionally, the transformation was complete. Where there had been doubt, there was belief. Where there had been skepticism, there was awe. Where there had been limitation, there was opportunity. The $75 million vein was not just a discovery of wealth. It was a discovery of possibility, courage, and resilience. It had rewritten the narrative of a family. It had silenced the skeptics. It had validated intuition and persistence. It had unlocked a life-changing fortune. I stood on the land once more, feeling the sun's warmth on my face, looking at the soil and rocks that had once been dismissed, and understood the true value of discovery. The land had taught me a final, invaluable lesson. The world often hides its treasures in plain sight, and those who see them are the ones brave enough to look closer. This was more than wealth. It was proof that courage, patience, and observation could rewrite destinies. It was proof that the impossible could become reality. And as I looked across the fields, I knew our story had only just begun. The legacy of $75 million was real, but the true legacy, the story of courage, vision, and belief, would endure forever.